Sorry, I heard it. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So, my apologies for not paying attention to the computer in the corner. So most of you know me. I'm Chris Ruggia for the recording, Director of Tourism for the City of Alpine. And tonight we're talking about hotel occupancy tax. And we have, in my mind, the expert on the Texas hotel occupancy tax. It's Justin Bradel, the lead counsel for Texas Hotel and Lodging Association. Justin's going to share with us the proper uses of the tax, what's legal, what's not. I'm going to be off to the side and I'll fill in the details of how the things he tells you reflect in our grants program. And especially the folks who have grants or who are interested in applying in the future. If you have a question about anything that he says related to that, ask it, and I'll be here to end. Once he's done, I'll be around for more questions. So
Yeah.
So free and easy.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah. And Chris and I know each other and been working together for a long time. And so when we've done this in this room many times before, so there's kind of a pattern to this. And what he says is exactly right. So I'm gonna lay out what the state law is for it comes to hotel taxes. And then any sort of specific policy questions you may have about how the application process works specifically in Alpine. Chris will be able to help you through that too, and then talk about how he promotes and what his department works to promote the area as a tourism destination. Because that's the whole point of this thing, right? Is that we work to promote the area as a tourism destination. I'm Justin Bradel. I'm general counsel for the Texas Hotel and Lodging Association. We are a nonprofit trade association representing hotels across the state of Texas. We have a partnership agreement with the city of Alpine, where the city of Alpine sponsors hotels and membership with our association. And so if you're a hotel operator in the room, and there's at least one of you or two of you in the room, we're happy to help you too in your operations, any sort of legal questions you may have. But I know most of you here are either present in your capacity as a city official, or maybe as an applicant for hotel tax funding, or maybe you're just a member of the public that's kind of interested in this whole thing. So let's talk about hotel taxes, and we need to start, I think, maybe a little bit more broadly than just the city hotel tax. And talk about, well, what is a hotel tax? Who does it apply to? And then we can start talking about the revenue that comes into the city and how it can be spent. The hotel taxes in Texas date back to 1959. And really, when we talk about hotel taxes, we're talking about two types of hotel taxes, or at least two hotel taxes that apply. There's the state 6% hotel tax. And every hotel in the state of Texas collects that state 6% hotel tax from every guest who stays at their hotel for less than 30 days and sends that money on to the Texas Comptroller's office. The money stays with the state of Texas, doesn't come back locally. But then in addition to that, every municipality, every city in Texas has the ability to levy by city ordinance its own local hotel occupancy tax. It applies to the same individuals for the most part, same guests, people who stay in a hotel for less than 30 days. And for the most part, municipal hotel taxes are capped at 7% for hotel stays. So we have the state 6%, the city 7%, we can combine those together, that's a 13% rate. In addition to the cities, many counties in Texas have the ability to levy a county hotel tax. The two counties in the area that have that ability are Brewster County, of course, county we're in right now, and Jeff Davis County. Those taxes apply much like the city hotel tax, but they don't overlap in these counties. Either somebody's going to collect a municipal hotel tax or a county hotel tax, but in these two counties, they don't overlap at all. Right? There's the easy subject to one or the other. So who collects the hotel tax? What's a hotel? Well, for purposes of the hotel tax, a hotel is any building that's rented out for public accommodations for less than 30 days. So of course, we're talking about the traditional hotels in town, right? Holland and Holiday Inn Express and Hampton, right? Typical traditional hotels, right? But it's also any place that's rented out to the public that's not, considered a traditional hotel. Maybe it's a house or an apartment, a short-term rental, right? That's rented out for less than 30 days. Those are usually considered to be hotels for purposes of the hotel tax as well. So the city of Alpine collects hotel taxes from every one of those traditional lodging establishments, but then also from all of the short-term rentals in the area. Okay, so that's the hotel tax and how it applies. The hotels remit that city hotel tax revenue directly to the city. So that means that the city is responsible for collecting that municipal hotel tax, and Brewster County is responsible for collecting their hotel tax directly from the lodging properties. And it can be somewhat of a challenge, particularly when it comes to short-term rentals, right? Got a lot of SDRs and city staff. Well, this is a pretty lean and mean city, right? As far as when it comes to staff, right? You all want a tight budget. And so city staff are responsible for having to collect that hotel tax as well, and it's remitted locally. All right, but y'all are really here for the most part, I think, when it comes to the other side of the coin, the expenditure of that local hotel tax revenue, right? What can the city use that hotel tax revenue on? Well, if you're involved in city finance in any way, the majority of the revenue you deal with when you're setting your annual budget comes in the form of property tax revenues, and then secondarily sales tax revenue, right? We have hotel taxes and other sorts of things, but the majority of the revenue in the city budget is property taxes, followed by sales tax revenue. And those are,
So we only get about 25% of our budget for sales tax and property tax.
okay, where's the remainder come from?
Our sales of gas, water.
Oh, okay,
trash collection, all the enterprise services.
enterprise rates, okay, but for tax revenues, it's property tax and sales tax revenue, but sure,
Yeah, but just.
good correction, good correction,
$17 million budget for
Right.
Alpine.
okay,
Okay, of which about 4 to 5 million comes from property sales tax.
all right.
Plus hotel occupancy tax, about $700,000.
That's right. Okay, thank you for that. And most of those revenue sources, right, are considered general revenue sources, right? And so the city can use those general revenue sources for just about anything, in most cases, that benefits the public, right? We gotta repave the streets, the sidewalks, pay the police department, city administrator, staff, right? Those are all things that can be paid for with general revenue. But hotel taxes are different. Hotel taxes are referred to as dedicated tax revenue sources. And that means that the state laws, in effect, govern how the city can use those hotel tax revenues. The hotel tax revenues are dedicated by state law under chapter 351 of the Texas Tax Code. And every dollar of hotel taxes that's collected by the city of Alpine must comply with a two-part test under chapter 351. The first part of that two-part test is a long sentence. Every expenditure must directly promote and enhance tourism and the hotel and convention industry. Right, so long sentence, as I mentioned, so let's break down that sentence. Every expenditure, so no discretion here, right? Every expenditure that we make has to follow this two-part test, not some dollars, not most dollars, right? Every expenditure must directly promote tourism in the hotel and convention industry. The word directly in that sentence has meaning, right? In the law, we say, what does it directly means? Well, it means there needs to be a connection between spending the dollar of hotel tax revenue and tourism and hotel activity, or some people say a nexus, right? But a connection, right? I always tell the story. If you've been on one of my sessions before, you've heard this story before. I'm going to say it again because it's an easy story. Many years ago, when I was new to this job, I went to a city council meeting in the evening. West Texas, further north, drove all the way out there, spent the night in a hotel, came back, and the mayor called me up next day, said, Justin, thanks for the city council meeting. You spent the night in one of our hotels. Do you remember if you tasted the tap water? I said, Mayor, I don't remember. I said, well, you didn't, because if you did, you would remember it. When people talk about what they don't like visiting, they say our water tastes really bad. And we know that the hotels would benefit from a new water treatment plant. Can we use hotel tax money for a new water treatment plant? Well, the answer is no, right? There's no connection between water treatment plants and tourism activity, right? What are some things that have this connection? Well, it's advertising and promoting the area as a tourism destination, right? Marketing Texas as a tourism destination. Everything that this man does for the city of Alpine benefits tourism and hotel activity, right? Maybe it's historical restoration and preservation that tourists and hotel guests are going to come and attend, right? Maybe it's arts related events and activity. There's a big arts event coming up pretty soon, right? Promoting that arts event, be paid for with hotel tax revenue. There needs to be a connection between spending this dollar of hot revenue and tourism and hotel activity, okay? All right. So every expenditure must directly promote tourism in the hotel and convention industry. You have heard this boiled down to a very simple statement, putting heads in beds. Right? You've heard that phrase before. This is where it comes from. Tourism and the hotel and convention industry, right? There needs to be a connection between spending this dollar of tourism and hotel activity and people coming to the area and spending the time. A tourist has a definition in the code. A tourist is defined as somebody from another city or another county. So if somebody drives over from, I don't know, Marfa for the day and shops in one of your stores, they're a tourist in Alpine, right? But it's not enough for us merely to promote tourism. We have to promote tourism and the hotel and convention industry. And the reason why this requirement exists, the reason why we have this in the law has to do with that tax rate, right? So we have a 6% state hotel tax rate, 7% municipal hotel tax rate. We combine those, it's 13%. Pretty high rate of tax, higher, much higher than the 8.25%, 6.25% plus local 2% sales tax rate. In our bigger metros in Texas, that tax rate jumps up to 17%. 19% if you count tourism districts as well. 19%. Sports districts, tourism districts, trolley districts, downtown PIDs, I mean, all these things, right? High rates of tax. But by and large, the lodging industry is comfortable with a 13% tax because this local hotel tax is dedicated to bringing more people to the area. This is like an economic development tax. The idea is we tax ourselves as an industry. In many cases, we ask for the tax with the idea that we're going to be able to promote the area, right? So when Brewster County decided to go to the legislature for the Brewster County hotel tax, who asked for that? Who's the hotel owners, the lodging operators in England and other places of the county went to the county and says, we want a hotel tax because we want to use that revenue to promote the area as a tourist destination. And so this is why, by and large, our industry is comfortable with this, but also why there is this requirement that we have to directly promote tourism and the hotel and convention industry. Okay, so that's the first thing we need to be aware of, right? The first part of the two-part test. Is there a connection between spending this dollar of hot revenue and tourism and hotel activity? If there is, that's fantastic. We've got to fit now that expenditure into one of the categories that's available to us. What are the categories? Well, conventions and visitor information centers. What are those? Well, yeah, convention centers are a building that are owned or managed by a city or county government, primarily used for meetings involving tourists. We know what a tourist is. He's somebody visiting from outside the area. But we have a building owned or managed by a city or county government, and more than half of the events that occur there involve people from outside the area. We can use hotel tax revenue for that purpose. Visitor Information Center does not need to be owned by a city or county government, but it can be. But it's a building or a portion of a building that's used to disseminate information to tourists. Now for this category, what's included with that? What can we actually spend the revenue on, hot revenue? Well, it's really anything related to the establishment, operation, construction, maintenance, etc. of one of these facilities can be paid for with hotel tax revenue. That includes ongoing maintenance and operations, right? So if you have a visitor information center, you need to pay staff to work at that visitor information center. You need to pay utility bills to keep that visitor center, operating, right? If you've got rent expenses, you can use hotel tax revenue to pay for the costs associated with operating that convention center or that visitor information center. Any questions about that? Okay. Next category is really easy, the registration of convention delegates. You've got a big convention or conference, you need to get people in and out of there, you need to hire temporary staff in order to make that happen. Use hotel tax revenue for that purpose. All right, let's talk about category 3, advertising and promotion. Or in the language of the law, advertising and conducting solicitations to attract tourists and hotel guests to the municipality and its vicinity. Advertising and promotion. This category is one of the most important categories for hotel tax usage. And we like this category quite a bit. We tend to get a lot of return on investment for the dollars spent in this category. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about using hot revenue to advertise and promote our area as a tourism destination. Maybe if that's the purchase of advertising or the maintenance of a website or social media, paying all the people in order to make that happen, right? To get the word out about our community, visit Alpine, your social media channels, which are fantastic. Right? I follow all of them on social media. Is that you? Okay, all right. I love the destiny. So yes, and so all of that, right? That's advertising and promoting Alpine and the greater Alpine area as a tourism destination. Right? You can go buy an ad in Texas Monthly. Sure, you can do that. But you can also use this category to advertise and promote the individual events and activities that occur in the area, right? So maybe you want to put on some sort of an event. You want tourists and hotel guests to know that event exists and bring people to the area. You can apply for hotel tax funding in order to advertise and promote your specific event to bring people to the area. You get a whole application process for that. You need to understand. Yes, ma'am.
Would that also apply to our member of the art gallery?
Is your event going to be, or are you hoping to attract tourists and hotel guests? Then yes, you can. Yep, right. This is an important category for that reason, right? And we see on average that about 6 out of every $10 locally is spent on advertising and promoting the area as a tourist destination. And Alpine actually has a special law that applies to Alpine, right? Where you must spend at least 50% of your hotel tax revenue on advertising and promoting the area as a tourism destination, a higher threshold than most other jurisdictions have, right? And so that's one of the reasons why this community is so focused on having a robust advertising and marketing program. Now, other communities or other governmental entities follow similar patterns, but that's really more of a policy trait, right? So the Brewster County Tourism Council in Brewster County also spends a similar portion, actually probably a higher portion, on advertising and promotion, but that's a policy decision that they make in order to really market and advertise the area as a tourism destination. So this category is really broad in the sense that you can use it for your events, right? To advertise and promote your events. Right here, we're not using hotel tax revenue to pay for the costs associated with actually hosting your event, but really for advertising and promoting your event. Now, we're going to talk about the costs associated with hosting your event in one of these other categories if it's an arts event. But yeah, advertising question. Anything you want to add in the advertising category?
Well, I would say that because we have that requirement, I generally advise people when they want to apply for the fund, start with advertising.
Yeah.
And for advertising to be your biggest ask, because it's the easiest yes to give, because we know we have to hit that mark.
That's right.
And if you're doing it, and also we want our events to promote to their audiences, because I don't have direct access to your audience the way that you do. And I don't know your niche, your market the way that you do. I can talk to a lot of different audiences, but say the Bluegrass Festival, they know the Bluegrass people. So we want to give them money to speak directly to the Bluegrass people.
And we don't want to give them promotion of the arts money if they're not going to advertise their event.
For sure.
Exactly. So it's a rule of thumb that if you come to the hotel tax committee and advertising is your smallest part of your request, you might not, they might give you only that.
Right.
You know, but if you ask for money in several different categories and advertising is the largest of those, they're gonna smile on that.
Right.
It's a lot easier to get to yes if you're looking for advertising.
Can you give a couple examples, Chris, about events you've worked with or how you work with organizations on the advertising and marketing front to help those dollars go even further and sort of what your role is with them?
My role is generally what the event organizer needs it to be. So I'm available to consult, I advise. Sometimes I've just done social media campaigns for people when they haven't had that capacity. We've co-opted as well, like sometimes an event has an award but we want to get a certain kind of ad or something, and I see that there's general benefit as well to kick in some of the general budget, and so sometimes we meet halfway, use some grant money, some general money.
Yeah,
I definitely, sometimes the event organizer, I don't hear from them at all. I try to reach out once or twice through the year to see if they need anything.
But you're supposed to have approval on all their.
That's very true. And yeah, that is one important thing that does tend to slip away from us. But according to policy, I need to sign off on every ad. Now, generally speaking, the way I treat that is when I make an ad campaign, I've got a template. You know, I'm running 10 ads, slightly different sizes, but they all kind of look the same. And so if I see the first one, I can say, yes, this direction is fine. If you're gonna dramatically change it, let me know, but otherwise we're good. But yes, I do need to confirm, there's two reasons that the city wants me to do that. One is to make sure that the city's recognized for that financial support. And the other is they want a minimum quality control. They want to make sure that
Somebody seriously altered our logo like a couple months ago. I was like, oh my gosh.
it was
you
like
gotta
an
talk to
AI
them.
thing. It was really
Really bad.
it was a bizarre version of the logo. Yeah, so we got that changed.
Fixed.
yeah, you're able to utilize expertise here, right? I think, yeah.
Well, Justin, you made a comment earlier that, and I don't very familiar with what goes on from the city of Alpine requirement. But you said most cities or municipality policy tends to be 50% or more for advertising.
So some surveys conducted by Destination Texas or TACBB as their former name goes, is that cities on average spend about 60% of their hot revenue on advertising and promotion. When you account for especially not just the marketing that the city does directly through their DMO, but also the grants that they approve for the various events that apply for hotel tax funding. A lot of that revenue is utilized by those individual applicants for their advertising and promotion. So 60% is on average, really for smaller communities. It's gonna be a little bit different than with the larger cities that have a lot of convention center debt, right, which is a whole other thing, not what you all have to worry about. When those cities have a debt obligations they have to meet, but for those mid-sized and smaller cities, yeah, it's 60% last time they've done their service.
Well, the reason I asked the question is council has had debate whether to go back to the legislature and get it changed.
Well,
And my reaction is waste of time, waste of effort. Let's focus on what makes sense.
sure.
As opposed to trying to change the legislation.
Yeah, and you may remember, so in the 2025 session, there was a bill that did repeal, that would have repealed the legislation for Alpine, and we were supportive of it, have been supportive of it for many, many years. The hotel tax bills all died in the legislative session due to some unrelated shenanigans that have to do with hotel developers out of one of the cities in North Texas. Was a lot of fun, and there was I think about 36 different community cities and counties that were all riding on that bill, and that bill went down in the last like 2 days of the legislation. So that would have affected or give you some flexibility, but your point is well taken, right? And certainly you want to focus on what you have, what you're working with right now, and let that to be dealt with separately. And look, we have the opportunity to go to the legislature and give you all more flexibility. We're glad to do it, provided that's still what you all want, because you all, the city is the community. But if you feel like, we don't care, well,
Weren't you guys lobbying like 800 pieces of legislation or something ridiculous in this last session?
it was great.
Yeah.
The reason I raise it, my sense is smaller communities are touched by personal relationships.
Yes,
And they want to go spend on particular activities or projects
yes,
as opposed to, let's go advertise and bring people in.
that's right.
And we'll figure out where to go.
You well said. Yeah, well said. Yeah. Okay, so advertising approach, you got a lot of flexibility here, and again, the idea is you're supposed to bring more people in and get a good ROI. Now, the category is going to be arts, and again, relevant for what's coming up this weekend. You may use hotel tax revenue for arts-related events and activities. This really allows you to go further than advertising and promoting that arts event. This allows you to pay for the costs associated with actually hosting that arts-related event and activity, right? You may use hotel tax revenue to actually put on the event, whatever that is, security, the paying the artists, live music, we see this a lot, right? Hiring the bands, all of that, right? That can all fit within the arts category, and you can use hotel tax revenue for that purpose, right? To advertise, like we'll go put on the arts related event, right? Do more than just advertising and promoting. There's one thing to keep in mind though with this category. It has a cap associated with it. This is true for all cities in Texas, not just Alpine. City may not spend more than 15% of its annual hot budget on arts-related events and activities, right? So if we use even number, the city collects $1 million in hotel tax revenue in a fiscal year. The most the city could spend on arts-related events and activities is $150,000 for that fiscal year, right? It's a cap that exists in the statute. Again, it matches what the other cities do. This isn't just an Alpine rule. And so you have to keep that in mind. If you're an arts organization that's applying for a hot grant and you're using this for infrastructure costs associated with your arts-related event or activity, keep in mind, it's gonna count towards that 15% cap, and you're gonna be competing, in a sense, with all the other arts-related events and activities in the area. So hold that out there. Remember, tourism and hotel activity needs to be a part of this. Probably not gonna be a problem for most of your applications in the arts category, right? I think most are gonna be open to the public. Most are gonna involve tourists and hotel guests. We've seen some weird edge cases in other cities. There was one city that was trying to buy art with hotel tax dollars to put in the senior citizen center. Not allowable. But for the most part, I think most of the events I think that we're going to entail or look at are going to involve some tourist and hotel guest activity. Okay. Historical restoration and preservation. City can use hotel tax revenue for historical restoration and preservation projects and activities. Again, this is for the preservation and restoration of historical sites and museums that are visited by tourists and hotel guests. So maybe we're paying for some of the costs associated with operating a historical museum, or maybe it's the upkeep of that historical site or the restoration or preservation of that historical site. We can do any of that with hotel tax revenue, provided that tourists and hotel guests are likely to see and attend or visit that historical site or attraction or event. Now, the tax code does not specify any further definitions of the term historical restoration and preservation. So it's going to be up to the community to establish reasonable interpretations for those phrases, right? Historical in nature. So there is no state law requirement, as an example, that a historic site be listed on a state or a national historic registry. That can be something that's built into the policy or even into the local ordinances, but state law does not require it. So we're going to follow what's a reasonable interpretation of historical restoration or preservation. Restoration and preservation implies that we're restoring something that has a historical record associated with it, right? So new construction needs to have a historical component to it, right? Now, we put a new roof on an old building as an example. That's historical restoration and preservation. But if we're building a whole new addition to a building that doesn't have historical history, any historical record associated with it, that's going to be outside the bounds of what that plain word means. This category 2 has a cap associated with it. It's also 15%. It's the same type of cap that applies with the arts. Alpine is not an outlier in this as well. It used to be at one point you were, but now the other cities all match Alpine as well. The city may not spend more than 15% of its annual hotel tax revenue for historical restoration and preservation projects and activities. Any questions about that category? Okay, just a few more categories to cover. Sporting events. You can use hotel tax revenue to cover the costs associated with hosting sporting events for the area. Here we're talking about a sporting event cost that goes beyond advertising and promotion. You could always advertise and promote sporting events under the advertising category. But maybe we have costs associated with actually putting on the sporting event, right? Team transportation costs, registration, security, food and beverage, right? Those are the types of things we're talking about here. We can use hotel tax revenue to cover those sporting event costs, provided the majority of the participants in the sporting event are tourists, right? So people coming from outside the area, staying and there's substantial economic activity at your area hotels. If you have that, you can use hotel tax revenue for that sporting event expenses.
What about sporting infrastructure?
No, sports infrastructure is beyond what's allowable. Now, there is a category that applies to certain bracketed cities. There's about 75, 80 cities across the state of Texas that have bracket authority to improve an existing sports facility that is owned by the municipality. You need to be bracketed into the statute in order to use hotel tax revenue for that sports facility improvement. And then there's a clawback that's associated with that as well. So either at a 5 or a 15-year, depending on the city we're talking about here, there's an analysis that city has to undertake to determine the amount of hotel revenue attributable to events at the sporting facility with the amount of hot revenue used to expand the sports facility. And if there's a deficiency there, the city needs to allocate general revenue to hotel tax purposes to make up the difference, right? So you're not in that category now. We can't go to the legislature and get that added in. That was a lot of those bills that died in 2025 and this last year were in that category. But yeah, you're not.
But you can't do building a new sports complex.
Can't do it. Can't do it. Now, if you want to build a sports complex with hotel tax revenue, there is a vehicle to do that. You don't need to go to the legislature for that authority. It also is referred to as the venue tax, right? The venue tax allows a city or a county to go to the voters under Chapter 334 local government code and ask for an election to be held, and the citizens, the voters in the area, will vote on that election on whether or not to impose a supplemental 2% hotel tax. And all of that revenue derived at that 2% is devoted to the debt associated with the construction of that venue. That venue can include a sports complex. There's some limitations on how that sports complex is used. It's got to be for ticketed events, that sort of thing, right? So we're not talking about just like, a city park sort of program. So that is a possibility. And we talk about large sporting events and, large sports facilities in our cities. That is the venue tax that typically had funded that. Alternatively, a city could use that revenue for a convention center facility instead of a sports venue.
Now, if a city passes this,
Yeah.
now that's a fund for that kind of venue, or does it need to be defined which venue that tax is collected?
The venue needs to be specifically defined in the ballot proposition, and all of the revenue derived at that additional 2% rate can go only to that event center or whatever it is that we're talking about here. That revenue can't be used for any other purpose. Yeah. Again, it's one of the ways cities can build things. The smallest city I'm aware of that does is Fort Stockton. Fort Stockton did a venue tax proposal for where was branch that the convention center that they undertook up there. 2% additional, hotel tax, and went to the voters of Fort Stockton. These things tend to pass, they don't always pass. You're asking the voters to approve a tax they don't have to pay.
Yeah.
And so as a
But
result.
it's in addition to our 7%.
So it's on top of it, right? So it would take the tax rate from 13% to 15% combined all. Okay, yes, ma'am.
I'm just asking to, because I'm here about.
Want to talk about it? Let's talk about it.
I'm confused, you haven't been here.
Okay,
Your phone, and this, all the payments that go out,
right.
one of the categories is local taxes remit, but what are these local taxes? Are they the hot tax, are they the Brewster County, what are the taxes they're referring to?
Sure. So,
It's time to start paying 7%.
Yeah.
Hot tax fund every month.
Okay.
The B and D revenue, I'd rather this is part of it.
let's talk about it. So, as I laid out at the beginning, the hotel tax is going to apply to any building that's rented out for overnight accommodations for less than 30 days. So whether we're talking about a short-term rental and SDR, we're talking about a hotel, are all subject to that same tax. Remember, the local hotel taxes are collected locally, right? Talk about this too, Chris. I know we're maybe trying to explore this a little bit more. Every one of those individual property owners, the short-term property owner, rental property owners, has an obligation to collect the 7% city hotel tax from every one of those guests and send that payment on to the city. Now, the compliance rate on this is lower than we would like because of all those individual STR operators in the city. They may not know that they had to collect that hotel tax. They may not have known that a hotel tax existed, right? I mean, we run into that all the time too. They may not know that they need to send that money on somebody else. That comes up quite a bit. So everyone has an obligation to collect that tax, whether or not they're meeting that obligation is a separate question, and it's something that, we certainly wish the compliance rates were higher. Now, there are a number of Texas cities and counties that have entered into something that's referred to as a voluntary collection, VCA for short, with Airbnb and or with Vrbo to collect those local hotel taxes. And there's about 25 cities, maybe less than that actually, 20 cities and counties across the state of Texas that have entered into those VCAs with those individual platforms to collect a hotel tax. It can be somewhat difficult to get those platforms to come on board with agreeing to those for whatever reason. They tend not to like to do it unless you're a very large player, a very large city or county. But sometimes they will, and we can certainly help try and connect the city with those entities. And that's nice for the lodging property owner, right? The STR owner, because then you don't have to think about
But
it.
her question is right now,
No,
no,
no, my
the
question
RVO is
is that-
best and Airbnb
That's correct.
does not collect your tax.
That is correct.
Why are they sending local taxes? And they having them out, local taxes can be met, where is that money?
But if you look at that, that webpage on Vrbo, whatever, they will then list the jurisdictions in which they have those agreements.
So it might not be going.
They don't have Alpine listed on there, so they don't have a voluntary collection agreement with Alpine to remit those taxes.
So where's the money going?
It's not being collected.
You have to add that onto your listing yourself.
That's right.
It says local taxes, and we remit, they're taking out everything we made, and that's reduced.
If
They're taking it out, the money was charged. That's.
here in Alpine on your listing, they're taking it. Well, that's what I know be a question for Vrbo to figure out where it is they're sending that money.
Really?
Yeah, and I will tell you that they don't have a voluntary collection agreement right now with the city of Alpine, right? So I don't know if they're actually taking it out. If they are, then we will need to figure out where that money is sitting, right? But you have, otherwise you have to go through and actually add that in to your listing and make sure that the money is collected.
All I'm saying is when you look at the details.
Right.
Money is being paid, the guest is paying, they pay this, they pay this, they pay this, they take out local taxes, and they give us a dollar amount that they're remitting. I don't know where it's going.
I don't know where it's going either.
That's something that THOA can help.
Yeah, I don't know where it's going either, yeah.
See, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because she's done tons of them.
No, she's a.
Yeah, do you know April McAnally?
No.
She manages.
She manages a bunch of them. She might be able to
Information.
walk you through.
Yeah. And we can help you look into this too. I'm not sure where that money is going then, if they're collecting that tax revenue. Because they're not sending it out to the city right now. Now, maybe we can get a voluntary collection agreement in place, right, with Vrbo and with Airbnb, but that hasn't happened yet. And then there's an alternative idea, where this is gonna be down the road, 2027 at the earliest. If the legislature changes the law with these platforms to have that local hotel tax revenue collected by Airbnb and by Vrbo and then sent to the comptroller. And then the comptroller will remit that tax revenue on to the cities. I know we would very much like to see that. I think that would clear this up for a lot of people and would certainly lead
Yeah.
to a lot more hotel tax revenue being collected from the area.
So it's still, when I went to the office last week, they said that every month I have to send in how much money our BNB made and pay 7% of that amount. Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
a lot.
Yeah.
So then the 6% that goes to the state, that's a totally different ballgame.
Yes, so Vrbo and Airbnb have a collection agreement with the state of Texas for the state hotel tax.
Okay.
So that money that state 6% should be being collected from every one of your guests and sent by Vrbo or Airbnb, I don't know which platform you're using, if you're using both, directly to the comptroller for your state 6% hotel tax, but it's the local hotel tax, the local 7% hotel tax that I think is in question right now, that we're not sure for your property, where that revenue is going, if it's actually being collected.
So I don't wanna keep dragging this out, but so what you're saying is that the state 6%, Verbo should be sending that.
They should be, and I'm sure they are, and I'm really confident that they are, because they just handle automatically, and we take a lot to opt out of that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so where are we? Historical restoration project, we talked about that, we're talking about sporting events, sporting centers.
Caps on sporting,
What's that?
cap on sporting.
No.
Percentage.
No, but, I mean, not a hard cap on that, but remember, you have an effective cap, because you have 50% of your revenue that's dedicated, to advertising and promotion. And then if city is dedicating another 15% for historical, 15% for arts, well, you're gonna get 20% left,
And
right?
there's a de facto strategic gap, because we have a committee to
Sure.
consider every request, and they're gonna make a recommendation to council. And they're not going to say, oh, we think it's in the city's strategic best interest to spend 4 to 5%,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Yes.
Also for here with sports, we said it's not for infrastructure, but the money that we award to Coke or not falls under historic
It's historic,
preservation.
yeah.
Not sporting,
Right.
because there's a historic sites.
Right, okay, yeah, you're using it for maintenance and upkeep and of the sports facility. Yeah. Okay, 2 more categories to talk about. Wayfinding sign. You can use hotel tax revenue for wayfinding signage that directs people to sites and attractions that are visited by tourists and hotel guests. Be owned by the city, can be owned by TxDOT, doesn't matter who owns it. Wayfinding signage can be temporary, can be permanent, it's up to you, right? The costs associated with installing and maintaining that wayfinding signage can be paid for with hotel tax revenue.
That is not something that traditionally the city offers grants for. We do budget
Yeah.
a small amount for city-driven projects for wayfinding, and the one recent exception was Museum of the Big Bend. They last fiscal year submitted a fairly sizable grant, which was awarded for wayfinding signage. The reasoning being, the city doesn't offer grants for wayfinding signage for events. But the museum is a permanent, is our most significant attraction, we decided that was a worthy thing, and in fact, we wound up. Carrying that grant forward to a new fiscal year, which we've never done before. There was a lot of mitigating circumstances there, but in general, that's not something that we'll get grants for.
Yeah, okay. All right, and then the last category, certain transportation systems for tourists. This is a little bit of an oddball category, but essentially you can use hotel tax revenue to pay for transportation costs. To bring people from one of your hotels to another hotel, from the hotel to a tourist attraction in or near the municipality, or from a hotel to the commercial center of the city or the convention center, which this place is the same, it's the same place. So you can use hotel tax revenue for these transportation systems, not for general city bus service or public transportation. This is tourist oriented. Could be for a special event though. It can be something you set up for a particular event. It can be something you run seasonally. But remember, we got a starter rent at a hotel, and so that's going to limit it somewhat on how we can use hotel tax revenue under this particular category. Certain transportation costs for tourists. Okay, so got that dollar hotel tax revenue, we want to spend it. First things first, does it directly promote tourism in the hotel and convention industry? Yes, that's great. Can we fit it within one of these categories, right? Convention centers and visitor information centers, convention delegates, advertising and promotion, the arts, historical restoration and preservation, sporting events, wayfinding signage, or certain transportation systems. We have a legal use of hotel tax revenue. We're now complying with the state law. Now, whether or not the grant is going to be approved in what amount is going to go to the committee, right? You're going to take a look at what revenues you have available, what the plans are, I presume, and
Exactly.
the application, what their other sources of revenue are, and then their tourism impacts. et
Yeah,
cetera.
that's exactly right. So if someone's interested in applying for a hotel grant, the biggest constraint is timing, because these are all done according to the fiscal year. So that runs from October 1st to September 30th. So before that, so the grant period is that fiscal year coming up. And the time that application needs to go in. So let's say you've got a July event. Well, you need to apply for that July event more than a year before the event you're applying for, because you're applying for the next fiscal year. And the grant process is usually starts in the spring, and we're gonna try and end it in late spring, if at all possible. That way it's done and in the city's budgeting process, and the council can worry about all those other really difficult decisions. And so how that works is we open a window of application, and that's March, April, somewhere in there, I think it was this year, and we give about a month for people to apply. And then they get kind of reviewed, and then they go to the hotel occupancy tax committee. And that group is going to then, we got a spreadsheet that they work into. there are various criteria that they're gonna consider, which are laid out on the city's website, cityofalpine.com, and you go to how do I apply for hotel occupancy tax grants? And there's a document with all the guidelines there, and it'll tell you all of those and exactly the kinds of things that Justin was talking about. A big one is the committee doesn't want to fund something where they're looking for 100% of their dollars to come from this grant. They want to help something good to happen, but they're not looking for the hotel tax to be the sole support of anything in particular. So they're looking at the diversity of revenues. Primarily, they're looking at how likely is it to really bring people in to spend the night, and they're going to do their best to assess that. There are reporting requirements that are also laid out in the guidelines, so absolutely, I would look through all of that. But again, so often people will come to Heather and I say, oh, we want to do this event and we want to apply for it. And the best we can offer is that you can apply, do it this year and then apply for next year because it's just coming too soon for that.
We just had that happen
Yeah.
like this last week, and they want to put on an event at the end of February, and it's kind of like you're like a year late, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. but
Yeah,
that's how
so
that works.
it's that far out, but I told them, have your event this year and track where people come from, so then you can answer our questions on the
Yeah,
application.
and so once you've done all of that, there are two layers of approval, and that's the committee and the council. And the one that's gonna be most closely at what you're proposing is the committee. And that committee changes from time to time. So like in the historical preservation restoration category, that committee are good. Those are the people that are going to be trying to make the determination, is it historical? Is it significant historical in such a way that it's going to be really visible to, important to travelers? Is it strategically in the best interest? So several years ago, the previous committee, we had a request for the Granada Theater sign, to refurbish that sign, which on its face to me is like the reason for that category, because this is a iconic, it's a landmark building. It's, bringing that sign back. But that committee felt like, well, the owner of the Granada was also bringing many grants that year. So they were kind of feeling like, whoa, grant after grant after grant. So I think that kind of weighed against it. But at the same time, they felt, that they shouldn't be using that tax money for a private business. I advised them that didn't have to be a concern, but it was a concern to the committee. So they rejected that request. Now, then this most previous year, the Ritchie, which is our most active music venue by far, and undoubtedly historical building, it's the oldest commercial building still standing in Alpine. They asked to build a back deck on that building so that they could open the upstairs room for music. And so we've got history, promotion of the arts. It's so active. It's a prime visitor place. And so it hit all the same marks that the Granada sign did, and this committee approved it without a second thought. So I'll advise these folks that they are going to make their own considerations. So never know how that's going to go. Yes.
I don't know if it's a question for you or you were talking about committee, and I was, how does the committee members selected, appointed, or how do they advertise they want to be on that position or what?
That is handled the same way that all of the cities, boards, and commissions are handled. It's a very specific process. When there's a vacancy, how are they announced, Rick? Is there a publication, or is it just often you'll just look on the website and scroll down and it'll say vacant?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And then people send an application to the city, we'll review it at council, and we'll make a decision.
Yeah, and so vacancies are indicated on the website, but not actively promoted. A lot of times it's the individual council members, because a lot of those boards have places based on the wards, not all of them, but a lot of them do. And so the council member for that ward is going to be.
But the Alpine committee is not ward based.
But no, that's not. And so the The hotel tax committee is more thematic. It's good, there are certain categories of people. We want hoteliers, we want event organizers, we want people that have interest in, direct interest in the travel industry. And so those are so if there's a vacancy and a person matches that requirement, either they're in that particular ward or whatever, then there's an online application. Then it goes to council for consideration for nomination. And then if a council member decides to nominate that person to the rest of the council, then it comes for vote, council votes. That's how. All right. We have two experts in there. Any other specific questions?
I've got one.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the one that we're kind of new to this, for instance, one we got, it's under the sporting event category. Obviously, it's a small part of what the total cost of this will be. Now, like, when we go to get reimbursed, if there's not an advertising component to sporting events, do we need to make sure that we include an advertising reimbursement?
No, because in this case, you weren't awarded that,
Because we are obviously gonna advertise, but I
Exactly,
didn't know
well-
if we needed to include that as part of it.
when I suggested that, it was a rule of thumb, you're kind of the outlier. Because they knew that your event definitely brings people to town, and so they were okay with awarding only a sporting award. In the future, we encourage you to do both.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna advertise anyway, and if you have those costs, why not throw them in the grant and get,
Yeah.
get them reimbursed, but no, in your case, that's the uphill piece, is that that event needs to have proven itself enough. Or needs to have the advertising that would show that they're gonna put that effort into bringing people.
Now, if you have that data, like Chris says, advertising and promotion, put that in the next application.
And you do not have to be a nonprofit or a
No, you
business
don't.
or.
There's no requirement about what kind of entity gets the award. What the committee wants is for people to come to town, and they want good ideas. We're such a small community, we want good ideas from anybody that has them. And so if you have that's kind of a really key part of the purpose for the grants program is and it's one of the criteria. There's there's a score that the committee gives out of 100 within, kind of weighted for each of those criteria, with the hotel stays being the heaviest weight. And then there's a couple of extra credit categories, and one of them is it innovative? Is it a new and innovative idea, or is it something? Is it a new program or an innovative one? If it is, then they get a little extra boost for that. And we're trying to reach audiences that we're not promoting to now, and cool and interesting things happen.
See, but
Yeah.
other questions for us?
Sorry.
Hi, I'm Mr. V with the Alpine Visitor Center, and I heard a little, I don't want to use the word complaint, but a little confusion about apparently the city application for the Airbnb people, the short-term rental people. Apparently on the form that they have to fill out, that they have to identify the profit that they're making on their rental.
Taxable revenue and taxable revenue.
I
Okay,
think
but
that was
instead of
the,
using- sorry, instead of using the word revenue, our form says profit.
Oh,
It seems like
That's a
there's
concern, yeah,
Yeah.
we're bringing that to the city.
Yeah,
manager's
pro-
attention. Yeah.
right, profit's not the right phrase, it's probably just a poor use of a word, but yeah, because that,
revenue.
yeah, because what the profit is none of our business.
That's
But
right.
the revenue and taxable revenue is for determining what the tax liability is.
Okay.
So, yeah, that would be my guess of what was intended on that form, I don't know, I didn't create the form,
Yeah.
but that's typically what cities require is.
Yeah, and in the case of the form, there was a long discussion at council a month, 6 weeks ago, I can't remember exactly, about the licensing of short-term rentals, the reporting requirements and things like that. And Councilman Stevens at that time had a question for the finance director: what's the percentage of hotel tax that hotels represent versus short-term rentals?
Sure.
Because there's a whole lot of effort and difficulty and wrangling around short-term rentals, and so he's wondering, what's the return on this investment of time? And so we were able to get, the itemized revenues from the finance director and separate them into those two buckets. And it turns out that 10.36% of collections are represented by 53 short-term rentals that remitted last year.
Sounds right.
And 89 point, almost 90% was 14 payers in the hotels.
Right.
Average hotel remittance for the year was 58,000. The average for the short-term rental was about 1,000. And the highest was like 7,000, second highest was 3,000, and the lowest was $10.
Right.
And so that's where the thinking of, if we can get Airbnb to collect this for us, great. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is being able to report to council, how are we doing? So getting that direct data. And our largest collecting hotels are Hampton, Holiday Inn. Paresh is very kind to me in sharing how they're doing, so that I've got something that I can report. I don't report the exact numbers, but that's an immense help. But and that is a part of the picture of how we're doing. It's one of the most important parts, but it's not the whole picture. And so one of the things I really am hoping that we can do is get that monthly reporting. In a lot of places, smaller places are gonna pay quarterly, but I want to know each month, how many rooms do they have available? How many nights did they book? But Rick and I were talking about, maybe for those folks who are paying less than $5,000 a month, which is most of the short-term rentals, maybe they don't need to do that. Because if it's that small of a piece of our collections, we have a good enough picture with the rest of them. So we're trying to balance that, what's onerous work for, there's the misconception that somebody opens up short-term rental and they're just raking it in.
Right.
And turns out that's not the case. And we didn't know that till us. Yeah.
So I guess my question is that when you get it all broken down, you have what is paid out to us, and what is the renter paid, which is a lot more because an Airbnb boom takes all this stuff. So what do we, on that 7% hot text thing, do we just put what is paid out to us or what the customer pays for all the fees are taken out?
So what you report to the city
Yeah.
is going to be the taxable revenue, so all of the things that your guest is paying that are gonna be subject to the hotel tax. Right, so that's gonna be typically for like a typical short-term rental, that's going to be the base room rate and the cleaning fees,
Okay.
right? And so that will be reported as the taxable revenue, right, because all those are gonna be subject to revenue. If you have any exemptions, well, that'll be your total revenue. If you have any, then you're gonna list your taxable revenue, those numbers may match. The taxable revenue may be a little bit less if you happen to have any exemptions from the tax. But for a short-term rental, that's gonna be extremely rare, because you're not gonna probably have any long-term stays, and you're probably not gonna have any federal government travelers, right? So your taxable revenue is probably going to match your total revenue, right? And then your 7% will be calculated on the taxable revenue.
Okay, well, but Verbo takes out a service fee.
That's on you.
That's right, that comes out of your profit,
This is what customer pays, that's right.
that's the taxable amount, right? And so and Verbo is going to maintain that their service fees are not subject to the hotel tax. I'm gonna leave that to the side, I don't wanna talk about that tonight. But go with what they're telling you, right? So you're gonna collect the tax on the amount that the guest pays that are related to the room charge and the cleaning fees. Okay, and then that's what you'll calculate 7% on and collect from the guest, and then you'll bid on to the city.
The biggest thing is that you need to add that local tax, otherwise it is coming out of your profit.
Right, yeah, that's right,
Yeah, so if they're not collecting it, you need to add that.
that's right.
more.
It says they're remitting it.
Well, yeah,
Remitting.
that's after that gets sorted.
Yeah, we need to figure out what's going on with that
Yeah.
account. We're happy to help you with that.
Okay.
It should not be you paying the tax, it should be the person staying at your. place.
Yeah, in 99% of the cases, I mean, there are some people that for whatever reason run a model where the tax is inclusive, I don't know why you would do it that way. But you could, but you're exactly right, Heather, it's usually, we add the tax on top of the state.
But basically, we have had 3 years in a row, a couple from Pennsylvania that have stayed for over 30 days.
So that would be an example then of those people that are going to, the taxable revenue versus your total revenue are gonna be different there, right? Your total revenue will be higher than your taxable revenue for that period, because the revenue the revenue from that over 30-day stay will not be subject to hotel taxes, provided two things happen. One, if we're talking about whether the tax applies to the first 30 days, they give you advance written notice of their intent to stay more than 30 days, and so they give it to you in writing. And two, that they actually stay more than 30 days with no interruption of right to use the property during that time frame. And we're happy to help you with any of that. You're a lodging operator, you're a member of our association. So any sort of legal questions you may have, whether it's tax related or anything related to your operations, you can always call us, and we never send you a bill for that, just give me a call.
The
Yeah,
membership is paid for by us, so
Exactly.
as long as you're
Right.
registered with us. you-
Carolyn here has a heck of a job trying to figure out how many entities are represented each year.
Yes.
But when we pay our membership, that gets every hotelier that remits that tax to the city does have and
Right.
deserve the services.
Well, this is a real important question, I think. So what about people, okay, they're responsible, they're gonna do the 7%, they're gonna fill out the paper and they're gonna turn it in with the money. What about the slackers? That's the penalty when people just say, I don't like to do it.
This is a challenge everywhere in the state of Texas. And, because again, cities are responsible for collecting this tax themselves. And there's a limited amount of city staff available to do the enforcement. Some cities have contracted with third-party providers to try and enforce the hotel tax, just in the general collection, and also to go after people that aren't collecting it. Other cities have taken it on themselves, and the majority of cities and counties simply are just not doing very much of that because it's beyond the capacity for them to be able to do.
Because the B&B, they have to be motivated to do what's right. And
Right.
half the people aren't doing what's right and you're thinking.
Well, we have to find them too, right? Even finding them can be difficult, right? So as you all know, like,
I'm not making my hand up.
if I go to, Airbnb's website right now on my phone, I'm not gonna get any property addresses until I actually book the transaction, right?
Well, exactly,
And
it's like, let's say that, so our profit, we have to take, basically, it's money we're making, we gotta pay 7% of that.
Well, hopefully you're collecting that from the guests, that's the idea. So, well,
Well, see, but this is it. If you're not, you should look at your prices
And they can-
and increase them by 7% right now.
well, yeah, that or get your system set up in such a way so that
Exactly.
that
It's
7%
bookkeeping for you, yes.
is added on, so when the customer books that transaction, they collect that 7% and you get that additional 7% of the revenue, which I think is what you're saying here.
Yeah.
And that way you're not losing that 7%. The tax is supposed to be paid for by the guests, not by you. You're the tax collector.
Just
Right.
like you pay sales tax, the store doesn't pay the sales tax, when you pay it, the
Right.
store remits.
It seems like.
It's no different.
Okay, so it seems like I need to contact Verbo.
Yes, probably, but if you want some help with that whole process, take a look at it. We can try to walk you through it.
No, more now, but I'm still.
Yeah, well, it's okay. So we're all here to learn and that's why you came here. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions for us? Yes, Council.
I have a question in advertisements and promotion. I know that it has to be spent in a certain miles away from the event.
Yes, that's a policy. It's not in the law.
That's a policy by Alpine.
But yeah, Alpine's policy is that, nothing closer than Presidio. Because if we started out with kind of the tri-county was out of bounds, but then when we really looked mileage wise to Fort Stockton, Presidio was about the same, and so we decided the tri-counties, not getting Presidio, and then everywhere else is fine. Yeah, and when you do something that's a mix, like, a lot of times this comes up with posters. If somebody's printing posters, we'll prorate it. So I just asked for the distribution plan so that you can tell me, okay, I'm printing 500 posters. Well, I know for a fact that you can't find more than 25 places in Alpine to put a poster. And so the rest of it probably going, if you're actually working distributed. So, but that's usually what I ask for is, I'm happy to sign off on reimbursement for the percentage of that actually advertised out.
But like if it's an event that's at the visitor center and I have posters made for it, it comes out of my operations budget, not out of.
It's not out of
It's
advertising.
promotion.
Yeah, we try to,
It's separate.
we're
That's
not
how we
required to
operate.
follow the
Yeah.
same rules that we put on other people, but we really
We
try
do.
to. Yeah,
So like our fundraiser that we're doing for the church,
yes.
and we're gonna advertise, right? And we will print probably more than 25.
Right.
I know it's not just, but we're headed to Dallas, Fort Worth,
Exactly.
Austin.
And so when you're deciding how you're gonna, like, how many you're gonna need for each place, just write it down. So you can say, we're printing this many, and this percentage of it's
You
local.
have a captive audience because you're gonna probably go to those dioceses. I would assume that's, yes, you're gonna put it in those churches and all those places. So that's an easy number to get
Yeah.
and to understand where they're going.
So then
Yeah.
that printing fee, I can prorate.
And you get a certain amount for design too.
Yeah, and that's something also that, this is again, a policy thing, because the advertising category is very flexible. But the city, when we give a grant, we want the majority of that money to actually go out there. So if, let's say, you hire a videographer to shoot your event so that you can use that for advertising, that's totally legit advertising expense. But for our grant purposes, we don't want to pay you just the videographer. We want to pay for this. So what we did was, of your advertising money, 15% of that can go to what we call production. So that's photography, design, web design, videography, that sort of thing. And so, that's how that works. And so, and if the poster say, you hire somebody to design the poster and then you print it, we can cover the design of that 50%. We're not gonna bother prorating that, but the printing we will. But we cover the whole design, but only the part of
We need
it.
to get them printed out further than Presidio and Woodstock.
Well, you can print them locally, that's great. We love to spend the money local. It's where, it's the people that see it. It's where they're gonna land at the end.
You can print them all here, but we're only gonna pay for what you distribute outside.
One of the things that Cindy does with the Bluegrass Festival, she uses Vistaprint and she orders her printing and drop ships it to people. And so that way we know that run went to, Kentucky or whatever. It's, and that way that's paper trail is super easy and we can reduce those things to the bottom. But if you have any questions, let me know. See it on your computer. Yeah, exactly.
We're starting to have our
Yeah,
meetings
good, good.
committee.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've ever done that, and
Yeah.
they said, go there, and I was like, oh, okay, and then when I got the packet, I was like, oh my, what did I get myself into? But, I sounded good. so
Yeah, but
I
yeah,
think we can do
absolutely.
it.
And
Yes.
that's available to help.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, y'all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to be here again.
Texted me that.
That was me.
Okay. All of a sudden I go, wow.
Exactly.
Should I ask tomorrow?
She is the expert on the listings at large. That's what I say, we should offer you a workshop sometime. Just there, for you, how you should create a listing.
See, what? Where we're at.
So. Yeah, for the most part. Question that came about Fort Stock and.
Yes.
And when you asked me about December, I moved December. particular reason why you'd be looking for timber or?
I was wondering, do they have any schedule?
We haven't yet, but we're working on it. We very much want to get one going. It's been a little while.